Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn and today I want to recap my 2024 writing year and talk a little bit about my goals for 2025. My 2024 writing year, while it was slower than I feel like all of my other writing years in the past, I cannot be more proud of myself with the progress that I did this year. I had 3 major projects that I worked on this year, and then a couple of short stories, and I think I wrote a poem too. I wrote this down a couple of days ago, but yeah, truly I think with everything that has happened this year, just personally, also decisions that I've made have taken away my time from writing, but I just am so proud of everything that I did in 2024. So at the beginning of 2024, I ended up finishing my cozy fantasy story. And if you are unfamiliar with this story, it's called Project Traveling Bards, where it follows this brother and sister who were pretty much like Hansel and Gretel. They were sacrificed by their parents to this witch in the woods who actually turned out to be not a eating children type of witch. And she raised them to become mercenaries, and they hunt people who are bad, but they also are bards and they sing songs, they tell tales of themselves. It's a hoot of a story, and I had a lot of fun while I was writing this story. I did write it at the end of 2023 into the beginning of 2024, and this book just was so fun and so cozy, and I truly cannot wait to return to this project. I truly cannot tell you guys how much I love this story and how high my hopes are, you know, of one day returning to this story, working on it again in 2025 and the years to come. I really want to take this story somewhere because I do think it's something that could be something eventually, but it does need a lot of TLC. Another story I ended up working on in 2024, just briefly, is my other project called Project Ice. This story is about a cursed queen in a treacherous, icy world where her father was murdered, and her father is the king, and she was away on a certain task. So she has to return back, and it's her journey back to her kingdom for her to take her throne. And with this story, my overall goal with this story, I think at the time I was writing it and the ideas I have for this story is a bit over my head at the moment. There's a lot of world building, there's a lot of magic. It is a very high fantasy story that really needs a lot of time and energy put into it for the payoff of the story to be what I want it to be. I spent a few months in 2024 working on this story. I did a lot of restructuring with this story. I ended up making it more of a multi-POV story, and I think it will pay off in the long run, making it instead of just following the princess. So like I said, this story, I have high hopes for it, but I do think it's going to take me quite a lot of time to get this story from where it is now, where it feels very bare bones. It feels very undercooked at the moment. And I do think this is a story that's going to take me many years to accomplish what I want the story to be. I have full hopes, confidence in this story and in myself to eventually get it to where it needs to be. But 2024 was not the year for me to really dive deep with this story because of how much time and energy and effort that the story is going to need to get it to where I want it to be. I did put the story on pause back in August because that was when I returned to school to go back to get my master's degree, and I just knew at that particular moment I could not dedicate the time and the energy and the effort into working full-time, school, and then also doing such a high fantasy story. So I did put this one on the shelf. It's just temporary. I absolutely have full intentions of returning to this story. I don't know if it'll be 2025 when I return to this project, but I do know I am going to return to this story because I want to tell this story and I really want to do it justice. So with me talking about Project Ice and putting that story back on the shelf for probably a couple of years, I do have another story I started working on this year, and it's called Project Getaway. And this one is a psychological thriller about these 2 women. They are somewhat acquaintances, just trying to get to know each other a little bit more. They both have their own individual intentions as to why they decided and agreed to go on this week-long resort trip with each other. They go to this resort spa that is also kind of haunted, and this place kind of could be its own living, breathing entity with its own intentions as well. Weird things obviously start happening. It's a psychological thriller. It's a little bit like The Shining, No Exit by Taylor Adams, a little bit like that. And The Shining is by Stephen King. Just in case, to make that clear. I have had a lot of fun writing this story. This is my first psychological thriller, and I've been having so much fun writing it. A part of the reason why I wanted to dive into the psychological thriller, kind of like that mystery type, is because in Project Traveling Bards, there is like a mystery subplot. I couldn't get that, I couldn't nail that down. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that genre, the psychological thriller genre, learn a little bit of like the ins and outs so I could pull some of that into like a mystery subplot for Project Traveling Bards. But of course, all of this stuff takes time. I'm doing my best. I have not finished this psychological thriller, Project Getaway. Haven't finished it. I want to say I am about 20,000 words into the project. I wrote down some bullet points, and that happened this year. I did a little bit of plotting, just very bare minimum before I jumped into this project. Had a little bit of my characters. I knew what my ending was and some bullet points along the way, and then just dove into this story. It's a lot slower writing and drafting this story than in the past with writing my fantasies, any of those fantasies, my high fantasy and my cozy fantasy. It's been a little bit more slow going, and it's not even just in a bad way. I've just been really enjoying and taking my time, trying to be clever and just enjoying the twists and the turns and the plot of the story. And these characters, you guys, these characters are bananas in Project Getaway. I can't with the two of them. They are just unhinged. I have plans to continue to work on this story in 2025. But before we get into 2025, I did end up writing 2 short stories. One of them I actually have a vlog, so I'll leave that vlog link down below if you're curious about that whole process. But I did a collab with one of my closest friends, Bree. We did a reading and a writing vlog. In that vlog, I wrote a short story and I submitted it to a magazine. I did not get accepted into this magazine, but I got some really solid feedback from an editor from that magazine, and it just gave me so much hope in my writing, and I really enjoyed getting feedback, not only from Bree, because Bree is a phenomenal critique partner and she knows a lot and she just is so good to have in your corner, but also to get an editor that I don't know to read my story and to give me feedback. That was just so fun. And that is something I learned so much about my writing process by sending Bree the story, but also by submitting the story and getting an editor's feedback. While I didn't get selected, I certainly was not upset about it because I got some amazing feedback. I did end up writing another short story, and honestly, this one was just for myself. It has to do with 9/11, and I wrote it around 9/11. I was feeling a little emotional around that time. I felt like the best way for me to have gotten my feelings out about things that were bothering me around that time was to write a story. And I wrote myself a short story that is a very obviously tragic, horrible story. I poured my heart and soul into that short story, and I learned a lot about myself and about where my headspace was at that time. I don't think anything will ever come out of that short story, but I needed to write that for myself. It was just one of those personal stories that I will always remember what I was doing, what I was feeling, what I was thinking in those moments, learning to accept it, and then having that story to always go back to. Okay, I'm gonna say this, but I'm gonna say this loosely. I did end up writing a poem. However, this poem goes inside Project Traveling Bards. They travel around telling stories about their mercenary trips and all of that fun stuff. While I wrote a poem, the poem is for another story. I had a lot of fun writing that. It's just chaotic and it's a mess. I'm not a poet, so I know I'm going to have to work on that skill also, but I did have a lot of fun writing that very interesting poem. I think that is everything for 2024 that I wrote. I honestly could not be happier with myself with my writing journey in 2024. It was a lot slower than I anticipated it to be. It was a lot slower than all of the other years with my writing, but truly honestly, I think it was probably one of my favorite writing years because I feel like I've learned to appreciate the time when I sit down and write, if that makes any sense. You know, it didn't feel like, oh my God, I have to sit down and write today. It was more of me finding the love of writing again, learning to sit down and to enjoy those quiet moments, to enjoy my hobby. I feel like me and my writing, that relationship, it strengthened a lot this past year, and I think that also had a lot to do with me choosing to write about topics that I just hold near and dear to my heart, and then writing stories that I really want to tell. Now that I'm finished talking about 2024 and all of that just really awesome writing year, I truly could not be happier. I do want to talk about my 2025 writing goals. I don't have quite as many goals this year with everything that's going on, and I feel like this is a great year to do less. Like, less is more this year. I do want to finish the first draft of Project Getaway, which is my psychological thriller. I would like to finish that within the first quarter of the year, so give myself 3 or 4 months to get that first draft written, take my time with it, have a lot of fun with it, squeeze in any writing sessions that I can, see what happens. I am going to allow myself, if after I finish that first draft, I want to dive right in and start editing it, working on a second draft, I'm gonna let myself do that. We're not going to be like, no, we have to work on another story. If I'm feeling the momentum writing that psychological thriller, we're just gonna go for it. I say that's a hard goal, but that's definitely a big goal that I do have for 2025, is to finish the first draft of Project Getaway. I do want to return to Project Traveling Bards, which is that cozy fantasy story I was working on at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. I want to work on that after I finish the first draft of Project Getaway. If I feel like I need a break from the psychological thriller, I will bounce back to my cozy fantasy. And I do want to make some pretty good progress with that story. I love the story, but I definitely know it needs some work. There's a lot of filler words and a lot of filler scenes, so I would like to flesh it out a little bit more and maybe work on a draft 2. I don't want to say I want to finish a second draft of that story, but I do want to make some pretty good progress with tightening up the story, with, you know, filling in all of the holes, working on some character development, maybe writing a few more poems for that story and working on the songwriting for that, but that can always come later too. And lastly, I would say another pretty big goal that I want to do for my writing in 2025 is to submit another short story to a magazine. And this can be at any point in time. I don't want to say I want to do like 6 of them or 5 of them or 12 of them or anything like that. I want to at least submit one more short story to a magazine at some point in 2025. I do want to vlog that whole process. I want to talk about it with you guys and really make that a fun and interactive thing. Who knows? Maybe I'll do more than one, but I definitely don't want to tell myself to do 2 short stories or 3 short stories or 1 per quarter or anything like that. I do just want to try and write 1 short story and submit it to a magazine. I really loved my experience with the magazine that I submitted my short story to in 2024, so I might use that same magazine, or I might branch out and try somebody else. Who knows? I guess I'll figure that out whenever that time gets here. Those are all of my writing goals for 2025, a nice solid wrap up of 2024. I'm feeling really great about my 2025 writing year. I think it's going to be slower than years past. I think it's gonna match the energy of 2024. And honestly, that's totally fine with me. I have been really trying to focus more on my reading experience and not so much of documenting my writing, but I do want to document everything that I've talked about in this video. So if you want to see more of my writing journey, definitely let me know down in the comments below. But this is what you can expect in my 2025 writing year. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope to see you throughout the 2025 year. Best of luck in your own writing journey. Let me know one goal that you have for yourself in 2025 for reading, for writing, a life goal, whatever you're feeling. I would absolutely love to cheer you on in this 2025 year. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.